Emperor, we come for you. We come for you.
Did IQs just drop sharply while I was away?
Long live the fighters!
You know, I love it when I hear that music.
I do too.
It's so great,
Gets me jazzed up.
right?
Yeah,
It's exciting. It actually sounds great. Like, I love it.
it does. It's the best part of our show.
I know.
It's arguably the most organized part of our show.
Yeah, everything else is just kind of like, we wing it.
It's spaghetti. You throw it against the wall, see what sticks.
See what sticks. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That
Well,
actually goes off for the most part without a hitch every week.
for the most part.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Not
Don't
always.
you make sure you've shared enough of your screen and sound and turn this off and click that button over, and
I hate you so much.
I love you.
I just hate you so much.
But
anyway,
but I love you.
we are back, as you can tell, for another action-packed episode of the Fusion Underground. This is season 4, episode 6. This is number 44.
44.
Number 44. We're getting up there.
Like a big dirty Harry.
Yeah. I want to do something special for the 50th, but I don't know.
You keep saying that, but you don't know.
I know.
What.
I know. I keep saying that, but I have no idea. Maybe we'll do one live. We'll get find like one person who will actually like tune in and watch it.
Okay. Actually, I think we should just do one where we start before we figure out what we're going to talk about tonight, and watch everybody see the behind the scenes idiocracy that happens.
Do a behind the scenes.
Yeah. The at least 20 to 30 minutes before we actually get started of you going, oh my gosh, I found this. Wait, where is it? Hold on. Let me click it over here. Where'd it go? Dang it. I lost it. What's going on? I don't know.
So attacked.
Well, in all fairness, I show up and you go, what do you want to talk about? I don't know. You're the boss, boss.
Great. So much pressure. So much pressure. I don't know if I can stand it. Well, here we are. We're back for another episode. And here at the Fusion Underground, we try to make sense of the world by having principled discussions about such topics as entertainment, current events, politics, and culture. Our mission is to educate people to become critical thinkers so they can live more empowered and happier lives. I'm your host, Manuel Ramirez, and I'm joined as always in the virtual studio with my brother, Jason Moret. How are you doing, sir?
I'm great. I'm great.
You know, we're going to really push that envelope tonight about the principled discussions piece.
Okay.
I'm just throwing it out.
Sounds
there.
Great.
Yeah.
That sounds like you're intentionally going to try and get me fired up over something.
I'm going to try. We're going to see what happens.
Okay.
We are going to see what happens. So and the reason why we're going to do that is because we're going to talk about leadership. Organizational leadership, I guess, at the highest levels, leadership at the highest levels. And we're going to see where that all boils out. But we're going to be talking about, we're going to find a way to rope in a piece that's a bit near and dear to both you and I, and that is Freemasonry. So we're going to do a little bit about that. This show's not about Freemasonry. Well, let me take a step back here. We're not going to be talking on tonight's episode. We're not directing this at Masons, or if you don't know anything about Masonry, that's okay.
Okay.
And I want to just kind of throw that out there because I don't want people to think, oh, this is going to be an episode about Masonry. No, it's really an episode about leadership. And we're going to be sort of roping that in, equating that leadership to the fraternity that you and I belong to, because I think there are some opportunities there, or some issues in terms of leadership that you and I have seen over the years. So we're going to kind of
Okay.
use that as a barometer, so to speak.
Sure. Well, it's a common ground. I think you and I can both speak
Yeah.
to, and it's an organization like, well, any organization has issues and or areas of improvement in leadership faculties. So I think that's a fair place for us to springboard from.
Yeah. So it'll be good.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about leadership. We're also going to talk about an article from Time Magazine. I don't know if you've seen it.
I just got my issue of Time at the door the other day. Where did it go? Oh wait, yeah, I don't get Time Magazine.
You don't get it.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't seen.
Didn't think so. I was like, what?
Yeah, really?
So we're going to talk about this, but
it's right next to the Washington Post.
and the New York Times.
Yeah.
Yes. I just realized that we're recording on Sundays. We tend to record on Sundays for those who don't know, and then we release on Tuesdays. And tonight is Super Bowl Sunday, and it's the first time in I don't know how long that I have not watched the Super Bowl. I have no idea what the score is. I haven't followed it. I haven't missed it. I haven't watched football all season, and I don't care.
Nope, me neither. And oddly enough, or funny enough, actually, I was just sitting with a brother Thursday night, and we were talking about a Super Bowl party that's not going to happen. And I said, "Oh yeah, who's in the Super Bowl anyway?" I had no idea. And I know he said the Buccaneers, which I was like, "Really? The Bucks? No kidding."
On Tom
Brady's
Brady's
and he told
arm.
me who else, but I have no idea who else is in there besides them.
Kansas City Chiefs.
The Chiefs?
The Chiefs.
Okay.
And the only reason why I knew
had no idea.
The only reason why I knew that is we were watching some shows on Hulu, and at the top of Hulu when you log in, it's got the two logos right there for a Super Bowl.
Oh, I'll be darned. Yep,
But,
my wife went to the grocery store to get milk and some other things, and she came back and said, "Oh yeah, I think there's a party down the way." I said, "Oh, okay." She goes, "Well, it's Super Bowl." I'm like, "Oh, tonight?" I'll be danged.
Yeah.
I don't know, don't care.
Yeah, don't care. Don't feel like I've missed anything at all.
No.
And that's I'm okay with that. I have before we get into this, I do have something that I want to share with you.
Okay.
Because I really am interested in what you think of this little gem. So I saw this on Twitter, and I'll just put this up here. As you can see, it's a young man, 19, early 20s maybe, and it's on TikTok. And there's somebody here. It's a reply. It's a comment, and I have no idea how TikTok works. I don't go on TikTok.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
It's probably my age showing there, I guess, right? I'm not one of the cool people.
Okay. You're not a tween?
Yes, correct. I'm not a. You know what? I don't think I actually shared the sound when I did this. Okay, yes, I did. All right. So
high tech.
Right. Well, Snurdly needs to get his act together.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, here, let me play this. This is only it's less than a minute here, and
all right.
Let's check this out.
Exactly. I am the oppressor. I am racist. Oh my God, he just said he's racist. It shouldn't be this hard, you guys. If you live in America, went to school, participate in the socioeconomic structures, participate in any sort of system, education, business, entertainment, what have you, and you are white, you are indoctrinated, you are oppressive, and yes, you are racist. It is something that we have learned, either consciously or subconsciously, all of us as white Americans. And what we have to do is unlearn that. I'm trying to do the work. Part of doing the work is pushing against dangerous narratives that are counterintuitive to that unlearning, like white people are also oppressed by racism. We're not. We are the oppressors. That's the point. You should be doing the unlearning too. Do the work.
Oh boy.
So I have all kinds of questions about that. What's your initial thoughts on that?
So, okay. Well, good for him. You know, he's latched onto it. He's taken the mantle. He's taken the ownership. He's like, yep, I'm a racist white dude and I'm going to fix myself. But I think, if I remember correctly, when we were watching that one particular lady talk about being woke and what white racism means, that if you're born white, you're born racist, and that's nothing that you can fix. You're going to be racist till you die. There's no fix for you. So what's the work? What is the work? What's the work that me as a white male has to do, because I do contribute to society in some way or fashion, shape or form? What do I have to do? Do I
That's
have
my
to
that's my
wash
problem with that.
myself in chocolate and then I'm not racist anymore? I mean, what do I have to do? Do I have to go build a railroad with John Henry before I can be considered not racist anymore? I don't know, but guess what? There's nothing that I'm going to be able to do to make anybody else believe that I'm not racist. So, well, you believe whatever the hell you want to believe. I don't really care.
And that's my problem with the video is he says he's doing the work. And
What's the work?
my first question was, well, what does that look like then? If
It looks like you putting on a TikTok video going, yes, you are. Use white male just like me. Means you the oppressor, you racist. Okay, fine. Let's just pretend for sake of argument, I go, okay, TikTok dude, I'm that guy. Yep, I'm racist. Help me. Now what? Now what? I got nothing. I'm looking. I'm listening. My big racist white man ears are wide open. Help me. Help me. I got nothing.
Well, that's what I mean. When you're doing work of any kind, there's a goal at the end of that. There's an outcome. There's a desired output. I have no idea what that desired output looks like. I have no idea what the end state looks like, and I have no idea what the actual individual tasks within the work looks like.
They don't either.
He just says he's doing the work. Okay, calling yourself a racist, that's just a label. That's just a describer. I don't understand actually what work he's trying to do or what that looks like when when he's done. But to your point, if you're born in this country, to the other person that we had heard a few weeks back who said if you're born white, then you're just automatically racist and there's no hope for you, you're always going to be racist, then what difference does it matter?
Yep.
Then there's no work to actually do.
There's no end goal. There's no way for me to unracist myself.
But then I'm curious, because then I have other questions. Like if a black, brown, yellow, whatever is born in the United States and they participate in the socioeconomic structure of the United States, then are they also racist as well? Or they get a pass? So
no, you get a color pass.
So how is it that certain people, I truly don't understand this. I don't understand how certain people can participate in the exact same thing. So it's like throwing a snowball into a mud pool, right? Or into the gutter. It's still going to get dirty. So the people that are participating in the socioeconomic structure being the pothole or whatever, and you get thrown into it, you're going to get dirty, right? I mean, so I don't understand how you can throw somebody into the mud hole and they don't get dirty. The dirt, a metaphor for racism. So how do they? I don't understand. Maybe we're beyond understanding. Maybe it's so convoluted that you and I are so indoctrinated through patriarchy, and we're so indoctrinated into being racist that we can't possibly understand how to not be. Maybe that's the case. I don't know.
It's got to be it. It's got to be it. And for me being white, so I can't speak for you, Dr. Ramirez. But for me, I mean, I am so white and so that racism is so ingrained within me. I mean, literally from birth, that it's impossible for me to ever cleanse myself of it. To use your analogy of getting dirty, it's impossible. But that, I think the idea is that there should be some sort of effort on my part to attempt to, regardless of whether that's possible or not. Now, so far as I know, nobody's actually been able to say, well, here's what you have to do that. And here's how much that's going to cost you. Because ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's follow, pay,
Right.
and submit.
Right. So here's a different story.
Okay, different story.
Here's a different story. I don't know if you've followed all of the global warming for the last 20 years.
A little bit.
So if you can rewind and go back to the early 2000s, there were a lot of people back then who were saying, you know what, global warming, it's terrible. We need to clean up the air so that we can reduce the temperature of the planet.
Yes.
And well, COVID has caused a lot of people to stay home, right?
And not drive.
And not drive. And a lot of cities have cleaner air.
Yes. And that has had an impact from what I understand.
Yes, the earth has heated up as a result.
Oh my God, no.
You can't win.
You can't make this shit up either.
You cannot make it up. So a study was just released last week, an alleged study, and I use study with the whole air quotes, that says that this is the title. This is off of fox8.com. I don't exactly know which anyway. And this says the title is Earth Heats Up Due to Pandemic's Cleaner Air Study Finds.
Yes. I heard that actually. My wife told me about it.
This is a paragraph from the book from the article. I'm
actually surprised it's still out there.
Yeah, it's still
it goes against the narrative.
Listen to this paragraph.
Okay.
I don't even know what to think about this. Cleaning up the air can actually warm the planet because that soot and sulfate pollution results in cooling.
Okay.
And soot and sulfate is in parentheses. So let me even read it without the parentheses. Cleaning up the air can actually warm the planet because that pollution results in cooling. But I thought the pollution resulted in heating. That's what we were told in the early 2000s.
You're not following the science. You're just a denier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry. We're being serious. I apologize. Let me back up. Well, is it possible that global warming... Oh, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. Wait. We have to do this correctly. Is it possible that climate change is a phenomena that occurs outside of the influence of the human species?
Yes.
It is possible.
Yes.
Well,
because we've only been on the planet for a very short period of time.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
That is very true. But obviously, a change in our behavior has resulted in a direct change in the climate.
Well, pollution levels, but yes, go ahead. Keep going.
Yes. Well, so I think we need to, this is absolutely imperative
as we raise taxes.
No.
Oh.
As somebody who cares deeply about the environment, and climate change is a very vital part of where we are headed as far as at least our political concentration in the next few years, that we open businesses back up, we get out of our houses, we drive our cars, because if we don't, we're actually causing damage to the climate and the environment and therefore the world. And don't you care about the children who are going to inherit the world from us? I do. So let's open the economy back up and get back to work, because staying at home is bad for the planet.
Yeah. I don't even know what I just can't even, I just don't have any evens to cant anymore. I can't do it.
Did you know that the world's volcanoes actually emit more CO2
Yes.
and pollutants in the air in 1 month than
Yes.
all of the vehicles in the world do
Yes.
in a 10-year period.
Yeah, I think it was Mount St. Helens. It released enough more CO2 than humanity has ever released in the entire history of mankind.
Correct.
Like in like the first hour or two of its eruption, there was more CO2 that was released. Most people don't even realize that the largest emitter of CO2 on the planet are the oceans.
That's correct.
The oceans emit far more CO2 into the atmosphere than all the humans on the earth combined.
Yep.
And I don't so we should drain the oceans then. I think we should
We should.
absolutely just
Yeah,
light fire,
absolutely.
find someone, pour gasoline. Let's just do it right. Pour oil all over the, drain it, find the bathtub plug, pull it out, drain all of it.
Mhm.
Find some way to get rid of all of the oceans.
Find the bathtub plug.
Yeah. I mean, if they can be
It's gotta
ridiculous,
be
I can
down
be
in the
ridiculous,
Laurentian
right?
abyss,
Yeah, exactly. Here's another one.
Oh my God.
Speaking of stupid news,
Okay.
New York Times. This is from the New York Times. Actually, this is
all
a
right.
story. This is a story about the New York Times.
Oh, okay.
Because journalists love writing stories about other journalists now. It is 220 or 2021, and we've been doing this for a couple of years, where journalists actually write stories for other journalists. And this particular article, the New York Times, here's the title: the New York Times reporter resigns for having referred to a racial slur 2 years ago.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
Read the title one more time for me, please.
Okay. New York Times reporter resigns for having referred to a racial slur 2 years ago. Yeah.
Referred.
Yes.
Mentioned.
Correct.
A racial slur.
Yes.
Didn't use it, but referred to it.
He sort of
years ago.
He sort of used it. So let me tell you. Let's just go through this a little bit, right?
Let's go through this. Should be good.
The New York Times reporter, who has recently faced backlash for having referred to a racial slur during a conversation with some students 2 years ago, resigned Friday. That's the first sentence, and my God, is it terrible. Donald McNeil, who, as the Times science reporter, has reported on the COVID-19 pandemic for the past year, was recently accused of referring to a slur during a New York Times high school student's trip to Peru in 2019. Yes. His resignation follows a Times review of the incident and an announced Thursday by the newspaper that stated McNeil had been disciplined for the incident with no mention of termination. McNeil had reportedly used the slur in the context of a discussion about the word itself, something he confirmed in a statement released on Friday. In that statement, McNeil said he was asked whether he thought a student should have been suspended for having used the word in a video. To understand this is McNeil writing here, quote, McNeil says, "To understand what was in the video," McNeil wrote, "I asked if she had called someone else the slur or whether she was rapping or quoting a book title. In asking the question, I used the slur itself. I should not have done that," he said, calling his reference to the slur deeply offensive and hurtful. This is where we are.
Are you freaking kidding me right now?
We can't even talk. This is 1984. We can't even talk about certain words with very specific context. He wasn't slinging the slur at somebody.
He wasn't using it. He was saying, okay, I'm reporting on this story and she used this word.
Right.
How did she use that word?
Right.
And that's what he faced backlash over?
Yes. He faced backlash because he was trying to get, it would be, for example, it would be like me asking you, Jason, did Joe Blow really use the term cracker in a negative way, or was he maybe rapping or, doing a kind of a video for it? And then somebody getting mad because I just said the word cracker.
Well, people don't get mad because you use the word cracker, but I understand what you're saying.
Right. This is what happened.
That's insanity.
That is exactly what happened. Did so and so actually use the word, or was maybe she rapping? So he was even, looking
Offering
for
up alternatives.
possibilities.
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
And because of that, and this had to have come out from the students who were on the trip.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so that was 2 years ago,
And
and now he's resigned. He had to resign.
well,
We
now
live
the
in a
article
clown
does
world.
say, hold on. The article does say that he was disciplined with no mention of termination. Now, in all due fairness to this reporter, because I don't know, but if I were that reporter and that's the way I use that, and I came under discipline for questioning, I'd frickin' resign. I mean, oh, you know what? To hell with you, New York Times. I'm not working for you. If this is the kind of crap and censorship I'm going to be subject to for just asking about how a word was used in what context, doing my job, to heck with you. Here's my resignation. Later, bye. I would.
He was at the New York Times for 40 years.
I don't care how long I'd have been there. If that's what I'd have left too.
I mean, this is just ridiculousness. We have reached a point with cancel culture and everything. And the reason why he resigned is because the paper was getting a lot of pressure around keeping him. So they originally were not going to terminate him. They disciplined him internally, but because the woke crowd has been pressuring the New York Times so heavily, he resigned from the paper. And of course, the woke crowd declares victory.
I'm surprised that they're settled with that.
Yeah. Anyway,
but there is absolutely no appeasing any of these people. I mean,
No.
that's just going to continue. It always does.
Yeah.
Until some people actually grow a backbone out there, in the New York Times as an example, although it's the New York Times, and says, no, that's what reporting is.
Yeah.
The content should be disturbing, asking questions about it to give you, our readers, accurate reporting of that news.
But he wasn't reporting the news. He was on a high school trip to Peru. And he was talking about a high school student, and some other students asked him, should this other person have been suspended? And so he was saying, well, wait a minute, what was the context? He was trying to figure out what is the context around that. You don't just suspend somebody because they use this word, but apparently you do.
Apparently, no, you can get them fired for it.
Yeah.
Idiots. Well, you know what? Probably better off on him, because I'm sure if he's thinking like that when he's in high school, good for you. He's probably a fairly decent reporter, which means he can do a hell of a lot better than work at the New York Times.
Okay. So let's shift gears and let's get into this whole conversation about leadership.
Okay.
And I'm going to kick this off with an article from Time Magazine.
Okay.
This just came out. This Time Magazine has landed on social media with a vengeance. I want to start this off because this is probably going to make you mad.
Well, yeah.
This didn't make me mad when I was reading it. For me, this was pretty much par for the course. This confirmed a lot of things that I have thought, that I have theorized, but of course I have zero proof, because who the hell am I? But before we get into this, I want everybody to understand that the Time Magazine is in no way, shape, or form a conservative article, a conservative outlet. No, it is
not even close.
It's not even close to a right-leaning media source. This is a very, very far left-leaning magazine.
Yeah,
and
it's almost CNN in print.
Yeah, I mean, it is pretty darn close to Pravda. Okay. Yeah. So this is Time Magazine. This was published on February 4th.
Okay.
This is crazy. The title of this: The Secret History of the Shadow Campaign That Saved the 2020 Election. That is the title.
Wow.
The
Okay.
title alone admits that there are very powerful organizations, people, what have you, manipulating things from behind the scenes to create or to produce the outcome of that we saw of the 2020 election.
Okay.
It starts off like this. The article said, a weird thing happened right after the November 3rd election. Nothing. The nation was braced for chaos. Liberal groups had vowed to take to the streets, planning hundreds of protests across the country. Right-wing militias were girding for battle. In a poll before Election Day, 75% of Americans voiced concern about violence. Instead, an eerie quiet descended. As President Trump refused to concede, the response was not mass action, but crickets. When media organizations called the race for Joe Biden on November 7th, jubilation broke out instead, as people thronged cities across the US to celebrate the democratic process that resulted in Trump's ouster. A second odd thing happened amid Trump's attempts to reverse the result. Corporate America turned on him. Hundreds of major business leaders, many of whom had backed Trump's candidacy and supported his policies, called on him to concede. To the president, something felt amiss. Quote, it was all very strange. It was all very, very strange, end quote, Trump said on December 2nd. Quote, within days after the election, we witnessed an orchestrated effort to anoint the winner, even while many key states were still being counted, end quote. This next sentence is a doozy.
Yeah.
In a way, Trump was right.
Wait. Okay.
This next
Keep
one,
going.
this next one is a doozy, okay?
Okay.
This next paragraph. There was a conspiracy unfolding behind the scenes, one that both curtailed the protests and coordinated the resistance from CEOs. Both surprises were the result of an informal alliance between left-wing activists and business titans. The pact was formalized in a terse, little-noticed joint statement of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and AFL-CIO published on Election Day. Both sides would come to see it as a sort of implicit bargain inspired by the summer's massive, sometimes destructive racial justice protests in which the forces of labor came together with the forces of capital to keep the peace and oppose Trump's assault on democracy.
I'm absorbing. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
The article goes on. Their work touched every aspect of the election. They got states to change voting systems and laws and helped secure hundreds of millions in public and private funding. They fended off voter suppression lawsuits, recruited armies of poll workers, and got millions of people to vote by mail for the first time. They successfully pressured social media companies to take a harder line against disinformation and used data-driven strategies to fight viral smears. They executed national public awareness campaigns that helped Americans understand how the vote count would unfold over days or weeks, preventing Trump's conspiracy theories and false claims of victory from getting more traction. After Election Day, they monitored every pressure point to ensure that Trump could not overturn the result. The untold story of the election is the thousands of people of both parties who accomplished the triumph of American democracy at its very foundation, says Norm Eisen, a prominent lawyer and former Obama administration official who recruited Republicans and Democrats to the board of the Voter Protection Program. Okay, wait a minute.
Yeah, well, keep,
They have, Time comes out right here in that paragraph that I just finished reading.
Mm-hmm.
Time has said, you know what? There were all of these powerful organizations in the country, and they came together after the election to stop Trump in his tracks from overturning the election, from overturning the results. And they did it to save democracy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's an oxymoronic statement if I've ever heard one.
They,
how did this get published?
I don't know.
Okay, keep going.
I mean,
I'm shocked that this is out in the public forum that people can actually read it. With the level of control that's been happening, that's been exercised by Google and pretty much any other search engine that's out there, and all of the Silicon Valley right now. I'm shocked that this is even somewhere that you can see it.
Listen to a little bit further in the article.
Okay, I'm
The
sorry.
article
Go ahead.
goes on and says, this is the inside story of the conspiracy to save the 2020 election based on access to the group's inner workings, never before seen documents, and interviews with dozens of those involved from across the political spectrum. Those are called data sources.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, what was this group?
These are various groups. Basically, there was a cabal that was put together to change voter laws, suppress
Right.
certain types of votes, to monitor social media, to spin everything against Trump. This is insane. The article goes on, it is the story of an unprecedented, creative, and determined campaign whose success also reveals how close the nation came to disaster. What disaster? What the disaster being that Trump could have won? Is that the disaster that they're talking about here? The disaster,
so.
how close the nation came to disaster. That's directly from the article, from the Time article. The only disaster that I can foresee, that I can think about, is the disaster of Trump actually winning re-election.
And the ensuing all what it referred to in the first paragraph, the first few sentences, the riots, the outrage, all that. And I could, all the riots and the rioting that could have happened, that would have been disastrous, absolutely. But how would that be any more disastrous than what we've already seen in the riots that have been going on for the past 9 months?
Right. The article goes on and says, quote, every attempt to interfere with the proper outcome of the election was defeated, says Ian Basson, co-founder of Protect Democracy, a nonpartisan rule of law advocacy group. But it's massively important for the country to understand that it didn't happen accidentally. The system didn't work magically. Democracy is not self-executing. This is insane. This is basically saying, you know what? Trump trying to overturn the election, or Trump trying to investigate voter fraud, that was what they're saying here is, for those that can put two and two together, they're saying that Trump's involvement after the election was him actually trying to attack democracy. But these people who are essentially doing the exact same thing that they accuse the president of, the people that are coming out and admitting, oh yeah, we rigged the election. They're saying they did it to protect democracy.
They did it to protect democracy, to protect the American people from themselves.
This is insane.
To ensure that they didn't have the power or ability to actually change the outcome that they knew was best for everybody.
Right. This would be like me punching you in the face and telling everybody who's watching, well, I'm doing it so he doesn't punch me in the face first.
I'm doing it for his own good.
And I'm doing it for our mutual benefit and advancement, so that Jason doesn't punch anybody else in the face. So
it's the future crime argument from Minority Report.
But they're the ones doing the future crime.
Right.
They're
committing the crime in order to prevent larger crime from potentially happening in the future.
It says the Time article goes on and says, that's why the participants want the secret history of the 2020 election told. Even though it sounds like a paranoid fever dream, a well-funded cabal of powerful people ranging across industries and ideologies, working together behind the scenes to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. That's a direct quote from the article. They were not. I'm not punching you in the face. I'm massaging your eyeball.
I'm massaging your cheek muscles.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. No, they're saying that they didn't rig the actual vote count, or that's not what they're intending. They
were fortifying.
Well, what they did, they were trying to make sure that the information provided to the voters was given to them in such a way that they had no other option but to vote the way they wanted.
They were
Okay.
not rigging the election, they were fortifying it. And they believe the public needs
Right.
to understand the system's fragility in order to ensure that democracy in America endures. What the hell is that last sentence supposed to mean?
That means that the future of our democracy as they see it cannot be trusted to the American people
Right.
to ensure continues.
Listen
That's
to
what that means.
listen to this. The next section of this article is titled "The Architect," and it starts like this. Sometime in the fall of 2019, Mike Podhorzer, I don't know how to pronounce that. Mike Podhorzer became convinced the election was headed for disaster. Disaster being Trump winning the
Disaster
election.
being Trump gets re-election. Right.
And determined to protect it. So this guy took it upon himself to say, Trump's going to get reelected. We need to protect the election from that happening. This was not his usual purview. For nearly a quarter century, Podhorzer, senior advisor to the president of the AFL-CIO, the nation's largest union federation and extremely left-wing, has marshaled the latest tactics and data to help its favored candidates win elections. Unassuming and professorial, he isn't the sort of hair-gelled political strategist who shows up on cable news. Among Democratic insiders, he's known as the wizard behind some of the biggest advances in political technology in recent decades. A group of liberal strategists he brought together in the early 2000s led to the creation of the Analyst Institute, a secretive firm that applies scientific methods to political campaigns. He was also involved in the founding of Catalyst, the flagship progressive data company. This is on March.
The funny part is, all of this sounds like a quote unquote right-wing conspiracy.
Yeah.
All that crap that these supposed right-wing conspiracy theorist wacko guys have been saying has been happening and going on. This is exactly what that sounds like.
Right.
And yet
But it's
Time is basically coming out saying this is true and this has been happening.
Right.
Here's the evidence. And they admit it.
They admit it. On March 3rd, Podhorzer drafted a 3-page confidential memo titled Threats to the 2020 Election. Trump has made it clear that this will not be a fair election and that he will reject anything but his own reelection as fake and rigged, he wrote. So they're just gonna fake and rig it, despite
so that they can make
so
sure.
they win.
Well, he's going to call it that anyway. So we start the narrative that
Right.
he's going to do that, so that when it happens, everybody's going to be prepared for it and basically blow it off.
I mean, this is the argument. This is the argument of like in cycling, right? In professional cycling, you have Lance Armstrong out there, and Lance Armstrong won how many Tour de France's? I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know how many. And then he got caught cheating. He was juicing. And then everybody came out and said, yeah, but everybody else was juicing. So he just made it an even playing field. That's what they're talking about here. They're saying that, well, Trump was going to fake and rig the election to secure his reelection anyway. So we just faked and rigged the election to be in our favor, to balance it out. This isn't an equation where you have to
hear them. I didn't hear them actually say that Trump was going to quote unquote fake or rig the election.
Here it is.
What I did hear them say is that he was going to say anything other than his victory. He was going to accuse that it was faked, rigged, etc.
Right. I know, but I'm saying that this is what the article is referring to. If Trump was going to, because these people these leftists here are saying that anything Trump was going to do, the only way that, because remember, the election was headed for disaster.
Yes.
The disaster being Trump's reelection. Why? Because
Correct.
Trump was going to pressure everybody and try to rig it in his favor. And so in order to avoid that, they're just going to go ahead and do it anyway to make it an even playing field so that it takes away his power within the election. That's what's happening here, but behind the lines of this article. If you look through it, that you have to understand they're making an argument that this is the case. This is why we had to. We had to do this. We had to, quote unquote, fortify the election. Because if we didn't fortify the election, then Trump was going to win. Why? Because he was going to claim that there was disinformation, that there was, whether or not that was true doesn't matter. He was going to say it anyway. So we can't have anybody believing that. So we're going to balance it out and make it so that it's fair by fortifying this election and changing rules, changing laws, changing the flow of information, and doing all of this stuff. Come on, the AFL-CIO, are you kidding me? This is one of the most corrupt organizations on the planet.
Yeah.
This is insane. Listen to this. There's a section in here called securing the vote.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The first task was overhauling America's bulky election infrastructure in the middle of a pandemic. America doesn't have an election infrastructure. States do. We do not have a federal election. The election that is decided at the federal level is run by the states, period. Mm-hmm. Which means there are 50 individual elections that occur within the 50 states, but there are Puerto Rico has votes and stuff like that. Right. But anyway, so America doesn't have an election infrastructure. It goes on. For the thousands of local, mostly nonpartisan officials who administer elections, the most urgent need was money. Why? They needed protective equipment like masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. You really? Kidding me? Kidding me with this crap? They needed to pay for postcards letting people know they could vote absentee, or in some states, to mail ballots to every voter. They needed additional staff and scanners to process ballots.
So they just provide scanners. Heck right. Yeah. Right. Sorry, keep going.
They have a whole section here titled "The Disinformation Defense." Mm-hmm. Laura Quinn, a veteran progressive operative who co-founded Catalyst, began studying this problem a few years ago. She piloted a nameless secret project. Well,
that must be up and up.
Which she has never before publicly discussed. Well, of course not, because then it would not have been secret.
Or nameless.
This secret cabal, the secret project that tracked disinformation online and tried to figure out how to combat it. One component was tracking dangerous lies that might otherwise spread unnoticed. What? Why does she get to determine if something is a lie or not?
Or dangerous. Free speech, right? Oh, wait, maybe not so free. Monitored free speech.
Researchers then provided information to campaigners or the media to track down the sources and expose them. Are you kidding me with this? The most important takeaway from Quinn's research, however, was that engaging with toxic content only made it worse. When you get attacked, the instinct is to push back, call it out, say, this isn't true, Quinn says. But the more engagement something gets, the more platforms boost it. The algorithm reads that as, oh, this is popular. People want more of it. The solution, she concluded, was to pressure platforms to enforce their rules, both by removing content or accounts that spread disinformation and by more aggressively policing it in the first place. No. This isn't necessarily disinformation. It's information that she doesn't like.
She doesn't agree with. Correct. It's outside the narrative that she's going along with, which we've seen. And actually, we've been indoctrinated with the idea that if it goes against the commonplace, if you are guilty in the court of public opinion, then cancel culture exists and is alive and well. And that's exactly what we're talking about. And this is where the wars on Twitter and Facebook and Parler have been going on, especially in and around and leading up to the election and after. What is disinformation? What is the definition of disinformation? Is that an opinion?
It depends on what day.
Am I not entitled to an opinion?
Right. No, you're not.
Because honestly, you're not entitled to an opinion unless you agree with the societal narrative. And that's the societal narrative that they're controlling, depending upon what platform you're on.
I mean,
yes, it's disgusting. and it's not right, and we should know better. And all of this should be shocking. And I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. This is what I've been saying. This is happening for a while, and I know you you kind of giggle at me, because I'm like, yeah, you seem upset, like you don't know this is what's been going on. It's disgusting, and it should be shocking. And if anybody out there in the sound of our voice actually is hearing this for the first time, I expect you to be shocked and appalled.
Here are the last two paragraphs of the article.
All right.
As I was reporting this article in November and December, I heard different claims about who should get the credit for thwarting Trump's plot. There it is. Remember, Trump was plotting as well. So this group of secret cabal, behind the scenes project people had to counterbalance his own plot by cooking up their own plot to keep everything fair and protect democracy. This is the kind of, anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Liberals argued, and back to the article, liberals argued the role of bottom-up people power shouldn't be overlooked, particularly the contributions of people of color and local grassroots activists. Others stressed the heroism of GOP officials like Van Langevelde and Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, who stood up to Trump at considerable cost. The truth is that neither likely could have succeeded without the other. It's astounding how close we came, how fragile all this really is, says Timmer, the former Michigan GOP executive director. It's like when Wile E. Coyote runs off the cliff. If you don't look down, you don't fall. Our democracy only survives if we all believe and don't look down. Democracy won in the end. The will of the people prevailed. But it's crazy in retrospect that this is what it took to put on an election in the United States of America. To put on an election, meaning
you had to
fortify it and
everything.
manipulate it and control the flow of information across social media, change rules and laws. This isn't me this is all directly from the article itself.
Right. Which cites sources within the quote unquote group or cabal, if you will, of people who admitted and are admitting that they actually manipulated and controlled the election.
What's funny is I want to this is amazing. There's a guy on Twitter that I follow. His name is Tim Pool. I guess he used to be in a band, or I don't know, and a skateboarder, but he's very popular. He's got a very popular podcast. He tweeted this out. I don't think this even matters at this point. Time magazine just came out, said that a cabal of elites rigged the election. I'm sorry, they said they didn't rig the election. They fortified it by changing the rules and laws, as well as manipulating the flow of information. That's what Tim Pool posted on social media. And yet, what did Twitter do? They flagged his tweet as, quote, "This claim of election fraud is disputed, and this tweet can't be replied to, retweeted, or liked due to a risk of violence." Risk of violence?
Yeah. From who?
Risk of violence? But he quoted the Time article.
Right.
It's right here. In the article, a well-funded cabal of powerful people to influence perceptions, change rules and laws, steer media coverage, and control the flow of information. They were not rigging the election. They were fortifying it. That's directly from Time magazine.
Yep.
We live in Oceania. This is 1984. This is the...
Well, and the most shocking part of this whole thing, I'll save you from your stammering, is that we are in a place right now, February 2021, where this article can come out and we accept it as, well, yeah, but, and there is no but. There's no but, there's no explanation, there's no rationale which makes this okay. And the American people know it. Yet we're in a place right now, everybody is going to hinge on the, yeah, but, well, it doesn't matter now. It's over and done. That's what I'm going to hear. That's what you're going to hear. And that's why this article will not be talked about on mainstream media. You're not going to see this on the news. You're not going to hear about it from those people.
But here's the problem that I have. Even if you do, Americans will hear this. Some will.
Some will. Mm-hmm.
Even some people on the left will get their Time magazine in the mail and they'll read this article.
Sure.
And they will be completely nonplussed.
Yep.
And
They'll be indifferent to it.
And Americans will hear this, will hear about this article, and they won't care.
Right.
And now the cat's out of the bag.
Yep.
Why would, if you got away with this, I can't even imagine how much money the people who were running Catalyst or these other types of backroom organizations that were doing a lot of that. I can't even begin to fathom how much money these individuals have made to run this. And now they ran it and they got away with it. Do you honestly think that they're just going to roll over in 2024?
No.
They're going to do it all over again.
Well, yeah. They did. So they did this in 2018. You and I talked about this. They had a dry run of this system already. And they did it and they got away with it.
But
because they had 2020 that they were going to get through. Now they did it. It's out there in the public. Everybody knows it. Everybody knew it up to this point. And the only recourse was trying to take it to court to get it looked at. And they said, nope, close the book. We control that. That's not happening. There's no point in hiding it now. What the hell? Right. Why hide it?
It's out.
What's the recourse in 2024? Nothing.
This would be like if you and I robbed a bank, literally robbed a bank, and wrote an article on Time magazine, putting our name and talking about how we actually robbed the bank and admitting, yeah, we did it. And then everybody going, meh, I'm going to go out and rob another bank.
Yeah. Bonnie and Clyde.
Right. If nobody's going to care, if nobody cares that I actually robbed the bank, well, then why should we stop robbing banks?
You're not gonna.
We're not gonna.
But that's been my argument from the get-go. What? They're not gonna stop here.
But now it's out of there. They can literally do it in broad daylight. They can do it out in the open.
The last free election you and I have seen and will ever see, I believe, was 2016. And that was when it was decided that democracy was too fragile to be trusted to the American people to ensure its continuance the way they wanted it done.
So let's switch this over into leadership.
Okay. All right. That's a good segue. Let's jump into that.
Because this isn't leadership. You cannot abandon all of your principles and your values and then do something immoral or unethical and then claim that you're doing it to save your values and principles.
No.
And that's exactly what happened.
But you can be a good manager and do that and mitigate the damage and fallout of a situation that you saw. You know, you see the train essentially running off the cliff because the tracks are out. And in your mind, those ends will always justify the means. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, there's in my work, I work a lot with teams and with leaders, managers. Some are really good managers. Some are really good leaders. Some are not really good at either. And I don't want to say that, you know, a lot of the people that I run into, even those who are not very good managers and not very good leaders, who are kind of bad at both of them, you know, a lot of it, sometimes it's not their fault. Now, okay, let me take a step back. I do think that they own a piece of it. And I always, as a coach, I always try to tell people there's a piece that you own. You can go out, you can find resources on how to be a better manager of things and how to be a better leader of people. You can, if you're thrust into that kind of an environment, there are plenty of avenues to explore to get better at being a leader within an organization. Okay. Now, so some of these people who are not very good managers and leaders, they have other avenues that they could explore and they haven't. So they own a piece of that. They own a piece of not bettering themselves. But the organization is also at fault to a large degree as well. So there's equal fault here to be spread around. And when an organization says, you know what, Jason, I'm going to promote you to be a leader, director, whatever, you're going to have all these people reporting to you, and I'm tasking you with the job of growing the organization. Okay, that sounds great. Most organizations don't train you how to do something like that. They don't send you to a training class. They don't give you some books. They haven't developed internal training programs for new managers or would-be managers in their organizations to make them better at managing and leading people. And so the organizations own a part of this as well.
Sure. Well, and I've seen there's a big okay, so one of the things that I think I'm noticing right away is we're talking, or at least you are, about managers and leaders. And I think that's important to distinguish. There's a very big difference between the two of them. Even when I was running a business up here where I'm at for a handful of years, I think that I was a better leader of the people than I was a manager of the business. And that's introspection on my part, just on how I operate. But I know a lot more people who are managers, whether it's of a department or whether it's of a business in its entirety, who automatically believe that that entitles them to be considered a leader and don't recognize the vast difference between those two roles.
Correct.
I do believe that there are training programs that I've seen some businesses create and institutionalize to train managers to a point. I don't think I've seen any who actually do any for true leaders.
True.
And the ones that do, sorry to say, they try to train managers and assume that's going to inspire or to create leaders out of them. That's what I've seen.
Sure, because as a manager, there are various things you have to do. You have to manage certain things. You have to look at your metrics. You have to understand what your metrics mean, and you have to understand a call to action for when your metrics say one thing versus another. Metrics, I always use the metaphor. I like the metaphor of the gas gauge in your car. The gas gauge in your car is a metric.
Sure.
And for the most part, you don't really pay that much attention to it, but you glance at it now and then. And there's a call to action when that needle gets to E, or it gets precariously
the
close
idiot
to
light
E.
comes on and says, "Hey, dum-dum, time to get gas." And you're like,
well, that's a metric. It tells you how much fuel you have in the car. And depending on how far you're traveling, that needle might mean different things to you. It's a metric. So, as a manager, you do have to learn how to read those metrics and how to respond to them in appropriate ways and in timely fashions. You also have to know things like how to pick a certain strategy for your organization. And there are different types of strategies based on what it is that you do. All of those things are fine. You have to be able to put together a business plan, for example, or at least understand it, understand why something is valuable, understand maybe you don't write the plan itself, but you should be familiar with various elements of a business plan and know why they're important. And you should have an understanding of your revenue streams and how much you're spending and your total costs and things like that. But those are the elements of being a manager. Those aren't necessarily elements of being a leader.
Correct.
And too often we confuse the two and say, well, if you can manage the books appropriately, then you're a good leader. Well, that's not necessarily the case. But even then, if you were an engineer and you got promoted up and now all of a sudden you're a manager, but you have no idea how to necessarily be a manager. You went to school or you learned how to become an engineer.
Sure. Right.
But doing the books and understanding value streams and understanding, ROI and profit margins and some finance and accounting as it relates to your business and all that. Well, unless you study that, then you're a fish out of water.
Right. Right.
And that's not fair to you either. I'm not saying you shouldn't be promoted and become a manager, but there should be some support that your organization provides for you to become that manager that they think you can become.
Right. Well, and I do think, and back to what you were saying about some of it lies on the individual themselves. If you've been essentially a desk jockey, or like you said, an engineer in a business, you know your job, you know your tasks, you know your limited scope of practice for what you do. When somebody actually says, okay, Bob, you're now a manager for the engineering department. Whoa, you at that point need to go, okay, amazing. Thank you so much. I'm honored. I'm humbled. I will try and do my best. Now we need to sit down and I need to know everything about what managing this department is going to mean, not only for me, but also for you, because you're going to have deliverables that you want me to not only provide for what I'm doing, but also what my entire department is doing. And too often I feel like if there's no, I've seen this before, and I'm sure you have too in your line of work, where you got somebody who's now promoted to a manager or a department or lead or whatever, director, use your term, doesn't matter. And they go, okay, great. And then they throw their hands up and say, well, nobody ever trained me, so I'm just going to keep doing what I do. And yeah, people come ask me questions. I just do the best I can. And that's all I got. And we kind of fake it till we make it is the idea, until somebody finally says, well, wait, don't you know what the business plan is? No. Well, nobody's shared with you what the profit and loss statement is? No.
And how to read
You haven't
one.
seen the P&L? What's a P&L? Oh my God. What are you doing?
Right.
I'm just trying to do my job. Well, nobody's trained me. I don't know. Well, there, like you said, there's equal responsibility, but there's a huge amount of initiative I feel is incumbent upon the individual to step up and inquire about what that means.
Absolutely. And that's why I say it's both sides. A good organization, if they're promoting you and they know that whether or not you have managerial experience or whether or not you have those skills, and maybe often people don't, because a lot of organizations promote from within. So if they hired you to be a chemist, let's say, and you've been a chemist, and then now they want you to be a leader of chemists. Well, what does that mean? You've never done that work before. So it's in the best interest of the organization. They want to keep you around. They want to incentivize you and keep your knowledge, and hopefully get other people be able to get you to mentor new chemists to be as good of a chemist as you were. Great.
Right.
I get it.
Mhm.
The organization should say, okay, well, there are certain things we need to get you up to speed on so that you can become an effective manager and leader of these new chemists. But at the same time, that chemist should sit down and at least say, wait, what are the skills that I need to be successful in this new role? And how can I maybe go out and do some learning on my own in preparation for the other training that my organization wants to give me, right? So both sides, there's a handshake there that has to happen. So I think you and I are in total agreement.
Yep.
The challenge, though, is and I see this in a lot of organizations that I work with, that people are in these leadership positions and they have no idea how to be a leader of people. They know how to manage
Correct.
things, but they don't know how to lead people. There's a difference there. And I like to say there's a difference, and the difference is you manage things, you lead people. You don't manage people, you lead them.
Right.
The problem is we get so focused on the managing of stuff. And a lot of managers don't understand that they have to take it upon themselves and learn things, and so that they can try to be better than what they are. Most people don't know that's part of what it means to be a leader. Is you have to be willing to grow. You have to really do some soul searching all the time to figure out where are your gaps, where are your inefficiencies, and how do I get better? Because if you can't do it for yourself, how are you going to be able to do it for the organization that you're leading? Because quite frankly, that's your job as a leader within an organization. Is you have to, every organization expects this of their leaders. They expect their leaders to be able to analyze how their organization functions, find those deficiencies, and fix them or improve upon them. In other words, improve beyond those inefficiencies, make them fix the inefficiency, and then make the organization better. That's your job as a leader. And if you can't do that internally, if you can't analyze yourself, then how are you ever going to do it of an organization? And this brings me back to Freemasonry.
Okay. Well, and I like the analogy that you use of managers manage things and leaders lead people.
Mm-hmm.
I like to break that out and just say managers control chaos, leaders inspire direction. The end result is essentially the same. So I actually had a teacher do a little experiment. We were actually working on, I don't even remember what the heck it was, but he was actually talking about thinking outside of the box and leading versus trying to control, and chaos and order and all this kind of stuff. So we did a little experiment one day, and the tables had butcher paper on it, which is how we were doing an experiment, because there was always butcher paper on the table, because we're going to make a mess with something. And he put a jar of marbles on the table upside down with the lid off, so it was open essentially on the bottom. And he said, okay, and he named one person at the table, you're the manager, make sure all of these marbles, one person is going to pick the lid up and all the marbles are going to come rushing out. Your job is to make sure all of them get contained, and then you take them to the other side of the room and put them in another jar. Okay. So we all did that. I said, all right, we sat around, and then boom, he lifts the jar off and boom, marbles go everywhere. So of course, everybody jumps on the table and tries to, herd all these marbles in together. It's kind of like herding cats, right? It's not as easy as you think. And there's marbles falling on the floor and stuff going all over the place, except for one table. And it wasn't mine, sorry to say. Dang it, I should have thought of it first. Well, they picked up the butcher paper and let the marbles go into the middle, and they carried it over and then just poured them all in. They were done like that. And he actually didn't think anybody was going to do that, because that's what he was going to suggest we do. And the idea was that when you actually don't try and control everything, and you just lead all of this path of least resistance, they'll go where you want them to go. And I use that analogy a lot with the difference between trying to be a manager. When I gave a little talk on leadership before and use that example. When you try and control chaos, it almost adds more chaos to it before you can finally start pushing some order into people. And that's what a lot of managers, especially in businesses, or heck, even a parent, you're a manager of your household, try and manage your kids running around. Same idea. It's just chaos. But if you can inspire those people to go in a direction that they want to go, all of a sudden, everybody lines up single file and it's an orderly fashion out. That's not being a manager unless you come down with fear of repercussion and dictum. When you can actually inspire people to follow of their own volition, it is very organized, it's very uniform, and there's an overall sense of accomplishment, and everybody reaches the quote unquote the finish line together.
It was a nice story.
Oh, thank you.
It really was a nice story. I liked it.
And I lost you in it, didn't I?
No, you didn't lose me. I thought it was a neat exercise. I don't think it's any secret that if people have listened to this show for any length of time, people know that you and I are both Freemasons, that we're both Masons.
Yep.
In the state of Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
And there was, and what is it that we like to say? What is it that when people say, well, what does Masonry do? What does Masonry do?
Oh, the tagline, the
catchphrase.
What is
the catchphrase that you always say?
Masonry makes good men better.
I say the same thing. We take
Yep.
good men and we make them better men.
Yep.
Right. That's what
Making
we
good
do.
men better men.
That's
Right.
what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is making, or the idea being, that if you practice the values and principles of Masonry, one hope, that's for me, I hope this, that you become a better leader.
Yeah.
Leader of
I
men.
can see that.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be of men. It could be of your community.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's not, we try to make, we make good men better men, not for other men. We make good men better men for the world around us in which we live, which includes all people.
And this is something I think it's lost in any discussion about leadership. And it always is. And a perfect example right now, anyone out there listening to this podcast, of course, it'll be Tuesday or thereafter when you're listening to it. But I guarantee you, if when we say we're going to be talking about leadership, you automatically go to your work in your mind. And you think about, well, I don't really lead other people. I just, I'm a department of one. Who the heck says this has anything to do with work? This doesn't have anything. Leadership is not an organizational principle. It's a personal value and principle. It's something that it applies to every aspect of every person's life.
And it can apply to an organization.
It
doesn't have
absolutely
to.
can. But I think that's specifically because, if not for a couple other reasons, but more specifically because every organization or business out there has a lot of people trying to accomplish a same goal.
Right.
In your household, you've got at least a handful of people you're trying to accomplish the same goal. In your communities, you all live in the same proximity. You have a whole handful of people trying to accomplish the same goal. Those goals might not be as lofty as securing democracy, but it may be as simple as just making it through dinner at home and getting everybody baths and pajamas on and hairbrushed and teeth brushed and in bed at a decent time tonight. Or it might be with a family gathering where you're going to try and accomplish a dinner, let's say for Thanksgiving. And everybody out there knows when you get together with that family for, let's say, Thanksgiving dinner, except for you, Dr. Ramirez. I know you don't celebrate Thanksgiving dinner with anybody because you don't like people.
Correct.
So, but there's always at least one person leading that gathering at home. Probably grandma. That's just how that happens, because grandpa goes, don't talk to me. I'm working the grill. I have my assignment. I do what I need to do. Grandma's in charge. Go talk to grandma. I mean, but there's always someone who steps up and takes and inspires everyone to reach that same common goal. This is not a business ideal. It's a species-driven human principle.
Yes. And I think we're failing in Masonry.
Okay.
I'm going to come right out and just say that. I think Masonry is failing in that regard. I think it's failing in Arizona.
Elaborate.
I think it's failing in Arizona, and I think it's failing at least nationally. And remember, when we're talking about leadership, I'm really thinking about leaders at the tops of organizations, or at the, not, and I talk about this with the teams that I coach. I say, you know what, in a team that we're coaching, we want to be open to anybody being a leader, because sometimes on a team, depending on the context, you're going to rely on different people to step up and be a leader through a specific scenario or a specific context. And you don't want to shut that down. You want to encourage that.
Sure.
But a lot of organizations...
I'm sorry. Football analogy, since everybody seems to get those. We had the Super Bowl today, apparently. So there's a leader on the field. I mean, the coach, he's the leader. When the offense is on the field, the quarterback may be the on the field leader. Same with the defense and those individual groups. That when you've got your safety and your corners, there may be a leader in that deep unit. I mean, there's individual leaders within those groups.
Right.
Sorry. Go ahead.
but I want to be more focused on the people who actually lead organizations or at the tippy tops of these groups.
Okay.
And for most people don't know this about Masonry, but Masonry doesn't have a singular leader, a leader worldwide, or a singular leader within the United States. We're all of the different lodges throughout the country, for example, they all fall under different jurisdictions, and we typically break those jurisdictions up by state.
Correct.
So the jurisdiction of Arizona is its own sort of entity, separate from California or Missouri or Florida, what have you, right? And so they all of the different states have their own respective leaders for that state. And when a state Masonic order decides to take upon themselves certain regulations or new rules, it really only affects the Masons in that state.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a story that hit this week, and this is from South Carolina. The story was published. There's a gentleman, there's a fellow brother here that, not here, I don't know where this brother is from, but he runs a blog.
Okay.
And he posted this story that's out of South Carolina. And I found this story to be very disturbing from a leadership perspective, as well as from a perspective of Freemasonry in general. So the way this story, and I'm just going to try to paraphrase this for the sake of time and so that we can talk about this.
Okay.
But there was a past Grand Master. And for those who don't know, a Grand Master, he's basically the Grand Poobah of the Masons in that jurisdiction.
Essentially the president for the state.
Yes.
If you consider each state its own sovereign nation within the fraternity.
Yes.
So he would essentially be a president, if you will.
So the whoever holds that position is referred to as a Grand Master. And once you are done being Grand Master, then you take upon yourself the title of past Grand Master. And there was a brother who was a past Grand Master of South Carolina. His name is Mike Smith, and he was expelled from the fraternity because of a Zoom meeting that he organized. And so what happened was, last year, because of COVID pandemic, the Grand Master of South Carolina issued an edict and said no Mason can meet in the lodges. And we did that here in the state of Arizona in order to, because, it wasn't necessarily a bad decision. We can certainly debate it now in hindsight.
Well, sure, but it was an exercise of caution, which was deemed essentially necessary at the time.
And especially because a lot of Masonic brothers are in their more seasoned years.
Oh, that was very nice.
There was a lot of concern over, with COVID. I mean, everybody knows, seasoned those most seasoned of us are at greater risk.
The fraternity consists of a fair number of gentlemen who are in the highest risk demographic for the virus.
Yeah. Now, I want everybody to know that the story that I'm referring to here on this blog posting, I have no firsthand knowledge of any of this. So all I know is what I've read on this blog post. But in South Carolina last year, the Grand Master issued an edict saying that no lodges could meet because of the pandemic. Well, the past Grand Master, Mike Smith, he's a member of the Shrine, which is which is an appendix body of Masonry. You don't need to understand all the different ones, but it's just a different group within Masonry. Mm-hmm. He wanted to have a Zoom meeting and basically get people together over Zoom and say how they were doing. Now,
check in.
Do you see anything wrong with that? We were all worried
about. No, well, especially we were all doing that, just calling out and doing Zoom meetings anyway, just going, hey, haven't seen you in forever. Just want to make sure we get a head count on who's still alive out there, back when we all thought our insides were going to explode.
Right. So the Grand Master on May 29th of 2020, the Grand Master of South Carolina, Most Worshipful Walter Disher II, issued an order that all Masonic meetings in South Carolina were to be suspended until further notice. And I'm quoting here from the blog post, quote, "As a reminder, no lodge hall is to be used during this time period. I have stopped several lodge functions that lodge members organized either through Zoom media, phone, or other venues. Brethren, as a reminder, it is a grave Masonic offense to conduct any irregular meeting or business during this time." So this went out to all the brothers in South Carolina. And the past Grand Master was expelled from the fraternity because he violated this edict by hosting a Zoom call. And what he did, he held an informal Zoom gathering for the state's Scottish Rite members, described by two participants as more of a "how is everybody doing?" health check and good cheer session. It was not a tiled meeting, which means an official meeting of the fraternity, or even a private one. Sources say no Masonic business was discussed. At least one attendee claims that Smith informed the Grand Master ahead of time and was acting in good faith. Nevertheless, after the event, Grandmaster Disher deemed it to be a violation of his no electronic Masonic meeting edict and sought charges against Smith. This is insane.
Yeah, that's going a bit too far, I think. That's waving your proverbial what's it in the air and saying you're disobeying me on purpose without actually thinking it through. And I don't know whether he was trying to make an example, but this is of a past Grand Master.
Yes.
For all of our non-Masonic listeners out there, that's essentially saying that we'll take Joe Biden right now, didn't like the fact that former President Barack Obama disagreed with him, so he exiled him from the United States.
That's what happened here, but Masonically, yes.
Yes.
Yeah. He would have expelled him from the
insanity.
country. Yeah, this is insanity. But these are the leaders of the fraternity in South Carolina.
So where's the uproar? Because there should be some.
Exactly, there should be some, and I think brothers here in the state of Arizona have had kind of an uproar over this. I don't know what is actually happening in South Carolina. Nothing has come about there, or at least come about online that I've seen. I'm sure there are people in an uproar. From what I understand, so another little tidbit. The lodge that the past Grandmaster belonged to, the Grandmaster showed up and actually pulled the charter. And by pulling the charter, that also meant that the past Grandmaster could not be tried within his own mother lodge, which means he actually kicked out the lodge. Well, it doesn't kick him out. By suspending the charter, it basically says you can't practice Masonry here until we decide your fate. That's essentially what happened.
So, okay. All right. You've given reason why the past Grandmaster was expelled. Whether I agree with that or not is irrelevant. But you didn't give any reason as to why the charter was pulled.
And the blog post doesn't say that. The blog post does not say why. I don't know. I mean, I would love to say that there was an actual reasoning behind it, and I would love to say what it is. But I don't. It's not in the blog posting itself. It just says that the most worshipful showed up to the lodge and pulled their charter.
That's deplorable.
Well, and it alludes, the blog post makes it allude to the fact that by pulling the charter of the lodge, the past Grandmaster would not be tried in his lodge, and then therefore would be tried at the Grand Lodge level. And at the Grand Lodge level, the current Grandmaster could then orchestrate the outcome of that trial and have the past Grandmaster expelled. So it appears to be on the surface, and I don't know if any of this is true, but it appears that the current Grandmaster orchestrated a coup, or not even a coup. The guy's not even a Grandmaster anymore. I don't know to what end. I don't know why this has happened. But all of the gyrations and the reasons and the actual activities that have transpired, whether or not they're right, wrong, and that's not really my point. My point is, this is an abuse of power.
Yes, that's what it sounds like to me. It sounds like a very, the nefarious means are one thing, but the actual actions behind this. Sorry, I'm at a complete loss for articulate thought here. It's I have nothing, and I guess the hardest part for me right now is that I could see some organizations doing this, but for Masonry to do this is disgusting. This is not
Correct.
what Masons are. This is not who we are. This is not how we act.
And this is, well, quite contrary. It is how we act. This is a Grand Master of the state of Carolina. He does, whether he's part of our jurisdiction or not, he represents Mason every time any one of us goes out the door, and we're wearing a Masonic ring or a Masonic hat, or we've got. I mean, in the state of Arizona, you can have a Masonic license plate on your car. Mm-hmm. We represent the fraternity. Does Most Worshipful Grand Master Disher of South Carolina, does he not represent Masonry?
Yeah.
He represents us, because people don't know the difference.
No.
And this is where this is where I'm going to touch on a really hard chord right now.
Okay.
Because I believe that Arizona is on a path like South Carolina. Not necessarily with our current leadership. I'm not pointing fingers at Arizona's leadership, at individual people and saying they're doing a bad job. I'm not doing that. As a fraternity in the state of Arizona, we seem, to me, in my professional opinion, we seem to be slightly askewed in the things that we value as an Arizona jurisdiction.
Okay, in what way?
We have placed so much emphasis on making new Masons that we do that almost to the detriment of everything else. It has become it has become a tremendous focus to the detriment of everything else.
And I can agree with that. Yep. Now this is something we've talked about, you and I have, and I've made mention of for years and years, that Freemasonry as a whole, as a worldwide fraternity, has seen a consistent decline in membership over the last, call it 50 years. I believe that, and everybody else out there does. And there has been a great push to make new Masons. It's been a membership push, and many states and many different jurisdictions have come up with different membership programs. And I remember as a fairly young Mason being asked, well, Jason, you guys seem to be doing something right up here in Flagstaff anyway, because our lodge was doing fairly well in that regard. What do you think we should do to solve our membership problem? I said, well, the first thing is you got to stop looking at it like a membership problem. And I've said that for a long time, because the minute you start looking at it as a membership problem, all you're trying to do is add more people into the fraternity.
Yeah.
It's essentially you're just trying to keep pouring more water into the glass instead of looking and realizing that your cup's got a hole in it.
Yeah.
If you start actually making brothers and bringing good men into that fold and leading them so that they not only feel like they belong, but that they have a part and they're valued and that they belong to this proverbial family, if you actually look at it not like a membership problem, but look at it as a brotherhood opportunity, that's how you actually address that. And that goes back to your point about when we were talking about leadership. It really is a leadership focus in inspiring those people to all unify to reach a common goal.
Correct. And, I'm going to tell the story. You know a little bit about this. When I first moved down from Flagstaff to Phoenix several years back, of course, everybody was asking me, even before I moved down, there were people in our lodge who would tell me, oh, now that you're going to be down in Phoenix, you should go to this lodge. This is a great lodge. Or you should go to this other lodge. That's a pretty good one. You should go to this other lodge. They were telling me which ones I should go to, which ones I should seek out. They were giving me advice on that, giving me at least a little bit of information that I could use for when I came down here. And when I first moved back to Phoenix, I did go to several different lodges to see what they were like. And this is something that as Masons, we encourage everybody to do, to go check out different lodges, because each lodge has their own unique culture and you want to find something that fits with you. Right. So I would go to these lodges, and almost every time I would go to a lodge for their stated meeting, I would show up 5 minutes before dinner. Nobody would talk to me. Let me repeat that. We live in a jurisdiction that is so focused on making new Masons that a dude walks into a lodge and nobody talks to him. What is wrong with us? And it got to the point that I would test it. I would intentionally. Now you have to understand, when you're taking people, even if I wasn't a Mason and you've got somebody coming in off the street, put yourself in their position. You're walking into a building where you know nobody. You have a mild curiosity. It already takes a lot for a lot of people, especially an introvert like myself. You've got other introverts out there. Walking into a group where there are a bunch of people, it can be a little intimidating. And how am I supposed to meet these people and talk to them? And nobody would talk to me. Where does that come from? Because I'll tell you where it comes from. It comes from the leadership of those lodges. It's a cultural thing. When you and I were in Flagstaff, there were many years prior, there had been a situation where we had learned, you and I were our officers of our lodge, and we had learned that somebody had came into our lodge and didn't get talked to.
And nobody talked to them.
And the officers, you and I were some of the officers at the time. The officers, when we learned about that, we took it upon ourselves to decide, you know what? Somebody has to be greeting everybody. Somebody has to welcome them in. And it became every week somebody was on point to do that. And it even got to the point that when all of the Masons would go into the lodge room and close the door, we even said one brother will stay outside even to continue to talk to that person, because it's weird. You go to a lodge and all of a sudden the lodge is getting ready to start. All the brothers go in, close the door, and it's like you got kicked out.
Yeah.
Right. We get it. I get it. The lodge has to do, it's there for a specific function and it has to go do its business. But we, the members of Flagstaff Lodge number 7 said, you know what? If that's the case, we're going to have somebody stay outside and continue to talk to that person if they want. Because as a Mason, I can go back in there once that person leaves, but it's rude to just leave them out there.
Oh yeah. Well, and I can tell you, I've stayed out of lodge many times, talking to guys who were just curious. Heck, guys and their wives who wanted to come up and learn about it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I have had incredible discussions with, well, some of them who are brothers now, who openly have said, I probably would not have joined the lodge or been a part of it had I not sat out there and talked to you for that good 2 hours while everybody else was inside. I
You know,
even had a brother tell me that one of their most memorable moments in Masonry, they're a master Mason now. One of their most memorable moments was sitting outside before they ever put their petition and talking with me,
yeah.
because
You,
it's just brotherhood.
when at Flagstaff, when there were guests that would come in, new people, when it would come in for dinner, we would always tell them, families and visitors, you go up front, you go get food first.
Mhm.
I would go to these lodges down here. Nobody cared if I actually got a plate. Nobody said, "Hey, you're a visitor, you're a guest. Why don't you go up front? Go first. You go." Nobody ever did that. I'm not saying they should, but it is a common courtesy thing. If somebody's a guest in your home, don't you want them to get served first?
Or at least at all.
I one time I was at, yeah, at least at all. I was at a lodge down here in Phoenix. I went for dinner. I sat at a table. No, I was one of the first people to sit down at a table that seats like 10 people, circular tables. Nobody came and sat down with me. People were sitting down at other tables, and I was up front.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the prime spot. It wasn't until I was done with my meal that some other brothers came and sat down, and they still didn't even talk to me. And then I found out that one of those brothers at the table was the master of the lodge. Didn't even look my way, didn't even welcome me into his lodge. Nothing. This is a leadership problem. We have a leadership problem. And if it's a leadership problem at the lodges, and this is multiple lodges that I've been to where this kind of thing occurs. So multiple lodges are guilty of this, or were. Maybe, and I'll give people the benefit of the doubt. I'll give my brothers here in Phoenix the benefit of the doubt. Perhaps it's been a couple of years. I mean, I have not been to lodge in a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's very possible that things have changed. And last year, 2020 was pretty much a no-show because we were done. We were basically canceled for the year. So it's possible that things have changed. I don't know. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt that maybe it has. My point being is, if the brothers of a lodge will not just welcome you in, why should I join your lodge? Why should anybody join your lodge? And they're doing that because the leaders of their lodge are not setting that example.
Agreed. Well, and I'll take it a step further and say, it's, again, leadership is not just for the person at the helm. It's everybody. Mm. And so this is not just a lodge officer's issue. It's a Masonic, and it's not even just a Masonic issue. This is a personal one for everyone out there. Where are we when one man can come visit any organization and be snubbed for being there, let alone one who's actually a part of it? And we as Masons, and I'll take it to a Masonic level, we almost pat ourselves on the back and prop ourselves up as being well above the commonplace level of thinking. And we don't regard each other as sir, but as brother.
Right.
And
this
to
isn't
use your
just
analogy,
here.
if you have somebody come into your home and you're there and you're getting ready to eat dinner, you're not going to go, hey, door's open, and sit down and eat dinner and ignore that person in your house.
Right. This isn't just a Phoenix problem. This isn't just an Arizona problem. I a couple of years ago, I went to the East Coast, and I will not mention the lodge that I went to, because that lodge is a very important lodge to all Masons in the country, in the United States. I think all Masons around the country hold this lodge in pretty high esteem. I know I did. And I was fortunate enough a few years back to visit that lodge on a very, very important night for that lodge. And I attended their dinner, and I was dressed up in a suit, and I got in there early because I wanted to look at the lodge and see it and bask in its glory. It's a beautiful lodge. And so I was there before any of the other brothers showed up, but the secretary was there. I talked with him, and then I went in for dinner. This is a formal event at this lodge. There were over 200 people in attendance for this event in the lodge, and we sat down to dinner. Not one person talked to me the entire dinner. I sat in the middle of the banquet hall, in the middle of the banquet room, at a round table again that seats about 10, 12 people. And that was the last table to fill up. And nobody talked to me there.
Now,
this isn't just Arizona. This is a tremendous problem. You can't, and all of the brothers were, hey brother, how are you? Hey brother, hugging, and and they were sitting down, and I'm looking, and I'm like, hi. Nobody would talk to me. One brother eventually came up to me after dinner, and he was seated at another table, and he finally came up and he said, why don't you come and sit with me in the lodge room? And I sat with him the rest of the time in the lodge room. And that was great.
So in all fairness, I want to make sure we're
Sure.
looking at this as fairly as possible. So I know you are naturally introverted.
Sure.
And you've mentioned visiting a handful of lodges and one out east. Is it possible that you did not make yourself available to other people to talk to either? Because we were talking earlier, when in a leadership position, there's equal onus on both sides.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
Let's try and approach this fairly and say, hey, Lucy, how come you didn't go up and go, hi, random brother, I'm Manuel Ramirez from Arizona?
Yeah. That's a fair question.
Mhm.
I am an introvert. I'm a huge introvert. And when I'm around those kinds of events, it's very difficult for me to go talk to somebody. It's very difficult. And I think a lot of introverts understand that. You as an extrovert, you talk to everybody walking in the room.
Yeah.
Right.
Some people outside of the room even.
Yeah, some people. And so I didn't want to talk to, I personally did not want to run around and try to talk to so many people. I wanted to try to talk to just a small handful of people to kind of get to know people, and in the hopes that maybe somebody would say, oh yeah, you should probably talk to that person, even if they pointed me to somebody afterwards. But that's specifically why. So I know that about myself. That I'm an introvert, and I don't really want to, it's really difficult for me to go out of my way and try to introduce people. Plus there being so many people, it's a bit overwhelming. And it was a formal dinner. It wasn't like, it was, wait staff. it was formal dinner. It was a $50 ticket, I think, or something like that to get in for the meal. And it was a black tie event. I didn't have a tuxedo, but all the other brothers were in tuxedos. Their spouses were with them. Their wives, girlfriends were with them. So, it was a pretty big to do. But it's also why, because I got there early, I sat at one of the tables, not in the back, in the middle of the room. Mm-hmm. And it was the last table to fill up. The
and
table's in the back. Now, keep in mind that it's a long room, and on one end is a table where the master and the other officers of the lodge sat at their table with their wives and girlfriends at one end of the room. I didn't sit in the far back. I sat literally in the middle, which means all the tables behind me filled up before my table did.
Yeah. Well, and unfortunately, I've seen the same type of behavior at lodge dinners. I've seen it at even our grand communication, which for the non-Masonic family out there listening, it's essentially all of the lodges in Arizona come together for one big weekend shindig together. And what
Don't call it a shindig. It's not a
okay,
shindig.
it's not a shindig,
It's
but
Congress.
yes,
We get
okay.
together to make rules for ourselves. That's
Yes.
what it is.
Okay. So, and even there we have our banquets, and what happens inevitably and always does is you get all the same brothers and their husbands or their wives and girlfriends basically sitting together at the, 2 or 3 tables, however many are there, and that's it. And we collectively, and I think you've even been a part of this, saying, no, don't sit with your brothers from your lodge.
Correct.
Go sit with some other brothers, get to know some other people.
Yeah.
I've loved going to some of those dinners because I get to talk to people, brothers and wives of brothers and girlfriends of brothers from other parts of the state. And the cool part is we have an immediate connection because of our affinity for Masonry, and we get to just start talking like almost like we've known each other for years and we're total strangers, which is awesome. But not everybody does that.
And yeah, and I get that not everybody does it. And what I've been trying to do for many years is to try to think of it as a one-off situation. I went to that lodge and nobody talked to me. Well, maybe it was a weird night. But when it continuously happened from lodge to lodge, that tells me that there's something within the organization itself, the larger organization, is setting a different type of expectation. Because Arizona Masonry does have its own culture. Even though the lodges have their own individual cultures, there is an Arizona culture here for Arizona Masonry. And I believe, and it's my professional opinion, that a lot of the way that the lodges are operating, or at least have operated in the past, I don't know if it's more recent, but that's because the Grand Line or the Grand Lodge has built a culture that is on its side. It's kind of, I don't want to call it completely upside down, but it's not standing forthright. And I don't know why. But when you go to different lodges and the feelings are the same and people are more hell-bent on making Masons. There was one lodge here that they were literally going to meet on a holiday. And I was thinking of actually joining that particular lodge, and they were going to meet on a holiday. And I said, well, you realize it's a holiday, right? And they said, yeah, but not only were they going to meet, they were going to do 2 degrees, 2 on the holiday. And I said, that's a holiday. Oh yeah, we're going to do it anyway. Are you more concerned with making Masons at that point? Or are you more concerned with making Masons after they've been initiated and after they've been brought into the fraternity?
Man. Well, and like I said, this has been a national, I at least say national. I don't know what other countries out there are dealing with, but a problem, and therefore a sentiment, if you will, that it's more the only duty and the sole duty of any lodge is to make Masons.
Yeah.
So
so there's no reason once you become a Mason, there's no reason to go back then.
Right. If that's the case, essentially, yes. And
there's no reason to go back.
That's exactly why I've said therein lies your biggest problem. If you were going to use that exact same phrase and say the only reason a lodge is to exist is to make brothers
That's different.
and to raise brothers, I can get behind that, because that by and just the sentiment alone, if you don't want to actually look at the definition, um, is very, very different. It's calling it a membership problem when your issue is actually it's a brotherhood problem.
Yeah, there are all these different appendant bodies within Masonry. You and I joined one of the appendant bodies many years ago, and I went to one meeting,
Mm-hmm.
and that was years ago.
Yeah.
And then I moved from Flagstaff to Phoenix, and I thought, well, at the time I was still relatively new being back to Phoenix, and I thought, well, maybe I'll go join it now that there's the appendant body meets regularly here in Phoenix, and maybe I'll go check it out more. And so I did some digging and found out who I could contact about switching my membership down here. And it was funny because they, when I contacted the brother and I said, hey, I'm thinking about, I'm a member. I'm a member of the appendant body. I'd like to join down here. He did some digging and called me back up and said, well, you haven't paid dues since, forever. And I said, no. I said, I just, I paid dues for that first year and never did anything with it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And that was, at this point it was like 7 years.
Right. 7 years
right?
post.
7 years post. Right. And so he said, well, you're going to have to, before you join here, you're going to have to pay back those 7 years worth of dues before we can make you
settle your dues in arrear.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I said, you're hurting for members. He said, yeah, but you're going to have to pay those 7 years in arrears or whatever, however many years it was. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. I didn't do anything with it.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, then you can't join. I said, okay.
Okay, bye.
And that was it.
Wow. Yeah.
And so they lost a member. So I
haven't joined that appendant body since I went through those degrees with you either.
Yeah.
And it's not because I didn't enjoy it. I actually did very much.
I really enjoyed it.
I really did. And I thought it was very, very meaningful. And I saw a lot of opportunity there. For me to go to those regular meetings meant travel for me, which was a little difficult at the time. And frankly, when I was there, I went a couple times. I felt that they were all very, very glad that I was there because they needed me to fill a spot that was missing.
Right.
Nobody cared that that I was there, me personally, but that another person was there meant the world.
They had another belly button.
Yep. That's right. Yeah. And I wanted to learn a lot yet, not just fill a spot.
Right.
So that was very discouraging, unfortunately, for me. And so I haven't been back to that since. And I actually joined another appendant body and went to an event down the southern part of the state. And I think I was one of 30 other men going through all those degrees at once. Congratulations, show up. And I got my little deal and I was done. And I was like, well, that didn't really mean a whole lot more to me than anything else. So I haven't been back to that either. But again, I think that the issue really lies in it's not a membership issue. It's a brotherhood issue. It's a fraternal and it's a belonging. And that's the difference between managing again and leading. Back to our point. When you actually lead an organization or a business or a household I don't care if it's a freaking neighborhood watch, when you actually inspire those people in that group to feel as though they are valued for who they are and a valued member of the organization or group because of what they can bring, that inspires them to want to perform and inspires them to want to belong. Yeah. And that's otherwise, if you're just managing and you're collecting, how many people, then they just feel like they're another person. They're just another tick mark on a
Right.
sheet.
That's all we're doing is we're managing as a fraternity. We're managing our lodges. And we hope that somebody shows up to our meetings. But there's, and I don't want to, I'm going to sound, this is probably going to sound extremely petty of me. But I want something more.
Well, and okay, so you've had to turn in a resignation and leave a job, I'm
Yeah.
sure. And probably more than once.
Yeah.
When your boss receives your resignation, go, all right, well, that's fine, whatever. That's a manager mentality. They've
Yeah.
already gone, okay, well, that sucks. Now I got to find somebody to replace you, but that's okay. I'll find somebody. I'll put the ad out. I'll let HR know and blah blah blah. When you have a boss that actually believes in you and has led you, somebody that you really respect, and they actually fight for you, or they say, oh my gosh, Manuel, I can't, you are irreplaceable, not just for what you can do, but for who you are. Is there anything I can do to make you stay? Are you unhappy? Let's talk. You know what I mean? All of a sudden you start questioning, well, was this the right decision or not? Because you feel like they actually care about you as a person. They're not just your manager. That's the leader of that organization who genuinely cares about you. There's a huge dichotomous difference, and everybody out there who's ever worked in any kind of business knows that.
But
they can't pinpoint it.
But we have been here talking as within Arizona as a jurisdiction. You and I have both heard it countless times from members of our Grand Lodge who year in and year out have always said, well, we want to change it, but it never changes. So I call bullshit. Now maybe again, I want to be fair.
Sure.
I haven't been involved in Grand Lodge in a long time. I haven't been a part of those kinds of meetings in a very long time. And maybe there have been changes. You've been more plugged in than I have.
Sure.
But in the limited ways, I'm plugged in with Arizona Masonry through social media, et cetera. So I do hear about various things that do happen. I don't hear about all of it, but I do hear about some things. And I hear about things talking with you and a few of the other brothers. Again, that's secondhand information. I'm not plugged in and like I used to be. But even when I was plugged in, there were always talk of, well, we need to change. We need to get better. We need to, and I never saw any of it changing. I never saw anybody I never saw anybody on the Grand Line who wanted to dig deep and do that hard work to make change. How has Arizona become a better place? And we get a new grandmaster every single year. Has any grandmaster made Arizona better than the way he received it? Or did he just manage it through the year and then hand it off to the next person? And that's a legitimate question because I don't know. Because from where I sit, and for all those years when I was plugged in and I was a member of our lodge, I'm still a member of our lodge, but when I was an officer of our lodge and when I was master of that lodge, like you were, I mean, we're both past masters here.
Right.
And when I was deeply involved in Masonry a few years back, and I still never saw it. So, and I still always felt that there was no change, that the grandmasters were just passing it off one to another like it was a baton in a race. And all they were doing was, please don't wreck the car while you have it and just make sure that the next person gets it. Has any grandmaster made Arizona better than what he received it? And that's a legitimate question.
That's a legitimate question. It's not one that I feel that I can fairly answer. And let me explain why before you jump on me. So just 1 second. There's a handful of grandmasters that I know of over the last 12 years. And the ones that I would be quick to say yes, they have. I recognize that I have a personal affinity to most of those that I would mention. And because of that, I don't know if my affinity for them as a brother and as a Mason and as a man would bias my opinion. Is that fair?
Sure, that's fair.
Okay. So I can think of one who I just talked to on the phone the other day, actually, um, who was recognizing what I believe, or what I believe his intent was, recognizing local lodge leaders who were not in a leadership position, with the idea that it was at the local lodge level, those leaders within their little departments. I mean, so if you want to take this to an organizational standpoint, you're a leader amongst your peers just by who you are. You're a natural born leader, so to speak. He made it a personal effort to recognize those guys at their local lodge level, because they were going to do the effectual change in those local areas that would see the fraternity through. And I thought that that was very intuitive on his part, that he felt, you know, his tenure was he's only going to be there for a year, and the master of the lodges are only going to be there for a year. But it's those younger guys, quote unquote, younger in the craft, they're not quite the master of the lodge yet, who actually have an opportunity to change the culture for the better in those lodges, that were going to make the difference. And to a point, he inspired me a lot. And I have a couple of the other grandmasters who did inspire me personally. So in that regard, I say yes, because by doing that, at least to those few people, if it wasn't just me, I would hope not, that is making a positive impact, because they should in turn, if they internalize that, take those lessons and that recognition and then make something of it, then yes, that is creating an effectual change. But I mean, to what level does that reach? And this goes back to my point when I was talking to you. It's not, I don't believe it's just the quote unquote CEO of a company that's going to change the face of that company. It's the individual leaders within it. Now, that being said, it all shit rolls downhill, and all of that comes from the top down as well. As the leader of any organization, I don't care whether it's the Elks or the Masons or the Rotary Club or Amazon. If you're the guy in charge, that is your charge, to lead that organization and inspire everyone beneath you, quote unquote, to strive to be better than they were before you started.
Has any grandmaster done anything to inspire you other than the one that you just spoke to?
Yes,
Okay.
I would say yes. But again, that was on a very personal level, not from a one based on his position.
I guess what I'm saying is, has there ever been a grandmaster who has inspired you to actually go out into the lodge, into either your lodge or other lodges, and try to do greatness at that level? It's and I don't want you to confuse, and I want to make sure, because I will take you at your word, but I want to make sure that when I'm saying inspire, I'm literally saying this person, just from the way they act, the way they behave as an individual, makes me not only want to be a better person, because there are a lot of brothers in our lodge that make me want to be a better person just by me being around them. They inspire me personally to become a better person.
Yes.
But I'm talking about, has there ever been a grandmaster who maybe didn't, I don't want to confuse impress with inspire, because there's some that I feel are impressive, but I don't feel that any one of them has just from their sheer will alone has inspired me to go, you know what, I need to get back involved. Or, you know what, I need to go out and reach over here and do something new, because they are this beacon of light to me. Has that ever happened?
Yes, but yes, but it was not when they were grandmaster. It was prior to that.
Well, what happened when they were a grandmaster? Why didn't that carry over? Why didn't their new position inspire you to greater heights? Because now they were in a better position to do so.
So this brother in particular inspired me by who they were. And I did say, oh my gosh, I need to dive more into a handful of different things. And then I learned a couple years later that that person was actually in the line or in the grand line and going up, and lo and behold, boom, he's Grand Master years after that. So that person had inspired me and continued to do so along the way. But he did that as a brother to whom I respected and looked up to, not as the Grand Master. And I think that's more what you're alluding to. Is that correct? Okay.
I've never been inspired by any of our grand line leadership. Whatever. Does
I
it
haven't
have to?
been
Do
in-
they have to? No, they don't.
I
have to. I'm
haven't
not saying they have
been
to.
inspired and pulled into greatness by anybody in the Grand Line because they were in the Grand Line.
So here, I know I'm doing a lot of complaining, or at least I'm airing a lot of laundry. And I do so from a place of love and concern for something that I care deeply about. But I know that as a Mason, I'm at the end of my line. Because you and I have talked about this before. I struggle every year on whether or not I'm going to pay my dues or just demit from the fraternity. Because I truly believe that our Arizona jurisdiction places more emphasis on just adding to the membership rolls than actually wanting to keep members that are already here. Now, they may say the opposite. They may say they want to keep people, but I don't. My mom used to always say, actions speak louder than words.
Mm-hmm.
I get that our leadership loves to say things. I get it. They say things till they're blue in the face. They say, we want to keep people. We want to inspire people. We want to do all of these great things. We talk all the time, but I don't see anything happening. I don't see leaders of this organization taking the organization onto their shoulders and saying, we're going to do something great this year. I don't see that. And so where I sit, I see an organization that wants to get new members. But once you're a member, they don't really care all that much. They say they do, and they care to a certain degree. But in business, we also learn that it's easier to keep a customer than it is to get a new one.
I've been in sales for a while, and I know a lot of people I know out there, even a couple that listen to this, are also in sales. The worst place you can get to as a salesman is called selling scared, where you're so afraid that you're not going to make the sale. You remember Tommy Boy when he first starts out? He's so afraid of losing a sale that that's what he's doing. He's selling scared. And when you sell scared, you suck.
Yeah.
And all you're trying to do is get a sale. And that's to a point what I've seen Freemasonry as a fraternity and other organizations out there doing as well. They're so worried about they're trying to make sure that they don't die instead of worrying about how to live.
Yes. And that's where we are as an organization. That's definitely where we are as Arizona Masons. I think the fraternity within Arizona is deathly afraid of dying, that they just don't want to stop and live. They get it. I get it. You have to think I understand that part of this. Part of me, I'm a cynic when it comes to government. As far as I'm concerned, Grand Lodge is a form of big government for us. I can't help but think that a lot of the reason why they need membership is so that they maintain revenue. And I understand that money makes the world go round and you have to have some. I get it. But anybody who's a successful entrepreneur, successful business person tells you, don't think about the money. The money will come. Think about the value that you provide to people, to your customers. If you focus on the value that you provide to your customers, then you will, the money will follow.
And you'll grow. You'll
And
flourish.
you'll grow.
Yep.
We flip that in Arizona. We flip it, and we're so focused on the revenue needs to increase and the only way to increase the revenue is to increase the membership. That's what you're telling me. That's not what they say, but their actions are what that I'm going based on what their actions are.
Yep.
Now, I'm not just here to crap all over the fraternity here in Arizona. I think that there are things that should be done differently. And I think that there are systemic changes that could be made, and not from a governmental standpoint. Well, partially. And let's talk just for a few minutes. I know we've been running long, but let's talk just for a few minutes on some of the things some ideas that could potentially fix Arizona Masonry, or it would at least show that we care about creating value for existing members.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so I told you, I ran a business up here for a handful of years. When I was asked to come take that business over, and hopefully lead it into success, it was failing. It was a failing business, almost on the verge of closing up. And they needed growth, and they wanted growth. And they said, Jason, how are we going to get more revenue? How are we going to get more growth out of this business? I said, we're going to stop focusing on growth, and we're going to stop focusing on revenue.
Yeah.
Well, Jason, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, the more you focus on that, the worse that problem's going to get. Right. I said, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on customer service and responsiveness to all of our customers. And that includes our referral sources.
Right.
And we're going to build those relationships up. And we're going to potentially take a loss for the first 18 months. But by doing that and focusing on our customers and providing a level of customer service that they want, we went from basically a business that was failing to the number one referral source, and the number one referred business in the area for what we did. And we thrived.
But let's understand something that happens within our jurisdiction, right?
Sure.
We have a progressive grand line. So we already know who's going to become the next Grand Master for the next year.
Yep.
And unless the stars misalign, that person will become the next Grand Master. We already know who it is.
Yep. For the next 3 to 4 years, potentially.
Yeah. For barring somebody moving, or, a health issue, or some personal tragedy or something like that, we know who the next and we could even go further than that depending on how we want to extend that out. But we know who all of the most worshipfuls in waiting are. Mm-hmm. And we know we can predict with some pretty good degree of certainty who will be the next master for the next Grand Master for each upcoming year. Mm-hmm. Now, that's insane to me. And the reason why that's insane is because there's no reason for anybody to do anything. So being a leader of an organization, especially an organization that's as big as something like Arizona Masonry, a big company, to be an amazing leader, you have to take risks.
Yes.
What risk is any of our progressive grand line going to take when they know who's going to be elected, and the entire culture has been, don't crash the car, just get it through your year and hand it off? Is anybody going to take any risk? Because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen one grandmaster take any kind of risk. I've seen grandmasters say things like, you can't have a Masonic club. I can't even create a Masonic chess club without getting panties all bunched up and making people feel uncomfortable because we use the word club, and they feel like it has to be regulated, and it has to have oversight, and it has to be approved. Are you kidding me? Do you remember that when you make somebody a Mason, you You highlight all of the values and principles that they are supposed to live their life by. And yet we don't trust any of our Masons to make a club, a group of guys who get together to even play chess on a regular basis. I want to start a chess club. We're going to meet once a month. We're going to play chess. We're going to have a good time. We're going to get together as brothers and we're going to play chess. And I have to create a charter. I have to get approval. I have to talk about what's going to happen with the club. I have to do all of these things because heaven forbid we let anybody go off and learn how to actually live within those values and principles as a Mason and not do anything stupid. You realize how asinine that sounds.
Right. Well, and that's going back to, you're not leading, you're managing.
You're managing.
Right.
So I can't even if it's just like, hey, let's do a movie club. Hey, brothers, pitch in. I'll go buy all the tickets. We're going to go see new movies when they come out. And obviously not right now because no movies are and there's COVID. But let's say in the future, we wanted to get together and just go out and do movies and just be as brothers. We can do that. Heaven forbid we use the term club.
Yeah.
We can't do that.
No, if we can do it in at the lodge level, and we'll just call it a committee or an activity.
An activity, but we can't call it a club. I can't do it across cross lodges.
Right.
In a formalized way. If I were leading this organization, I would gather my other co-leaders together and I would say, guys, we need to articulate not only what our mission and our vision statements are for Arizona Masonry. We need to come up with a mission and vision statement if we don't have it. If we do have one, we need to revisit it. I don't know if we have one as a fraternity other than take good men and make them better men. Does Arizona have a mission and vision statement? I don't know. But they should. We should have one.
Yeah.
We should be able to articulate what our core values are as Arizona Masons. That should be defined somewhere. We should be able to know what that is. We don't have that. Yes, I know the Grand Lodge has all of the ins and outs, knows all of the ins and outs of all of the finances of all of the lodges. Great. Whatever. That's one part. But as an organization, you also want to know how the people in your organization are doing. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been asked if you like the Grand Line, if you like Arizona Masonry, if you like what's happening in Arizona?
No.
Why not? Is it because nobody has thought about it, or is it because our leaders are scared of the answers?
Well, no, I don't think it's scared of the answer as much as it is scared with what do you do with that? I mean, let's just pretend I was a Grand Master and I created a phone tree to reach out to all of the Master Masons in Arizona. And I was going to ask the question, how are you doing? Things going okay? Is there anything that you need help with? And oh, by the way, are you satisfied with your Grand Lodge and how you're being represented and what's going on? Because unless you say, I'm good, family's good, I don't need anything, and yeah, love you guys to pieces, then that would mean you'd have to actually do something with that.
Of course you have to do something with it. And what's difficult is you only serve 1 year.
Sure.
As Grand Master. So there's not a lot of time for you to do anything.
No, but that would be something that you would have to actually meet with all of your line officers and say, okay, we're going to work on a 7-year turning the course project. And we're going to be reaching out to every Mason in the state and ask them those questions. And we're going to have to start figuring out what we're going to do with that over the next 7 years and start plotting a course of correction. Because you can't fix that overnight.
You can't fix it overnight. But here's the other thing.
Happen overnight. You're not going to fix it overnight.
But here's the other thing. The Grand Master could be reelected.
Okay.
Why do we have to progress the line all the time?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
In our Constitution that he only serves 1 year, just like the Master does.
It's fine to serve 1 year, but my point being is you can be reelected. If the brothers got together at the Grand Communication and said, Jason Moret, you're Grand Master, great. Jason, and then the following year, Jason Moret, you are doing such an awesome job. You are inspiring. You are an inspiration to all of our members. You are doing wonderful. We want you to do it again.
No, thank you very much.
But we don't do that.
No.
We take, even if there's a person who is doing a job that's awesome, who is doing that awesome job, well, we move them out the very next year. Mm-hmm. Because that's what we've always done. I mean, the brothers own some of this. I'm not trying to pin all of this on the Grand Lodge, but the brothers own some of this. They can stand up. They can say no to some of the stupidity that happens. But yet when we get together at Grand Communication, one, we like to pat ourselves on the back. Mm-hmm. So we get together and we give ourselves awards, right? And we get together and we impose restrictions on ourselves. And that's called creating new legislation.
Right.
So we make it harder. We literally set time once a year to make our lives harder as Masons within the fraternity at the state level. And yet there are brothers who thrive for that. They mm-hmm. live for that. There are, you know as well as I do, that we have brothers that love to introduce legislation constantly.
Yeah.
And they, every single time they do, they're looking for new rules that they can bestow upon our fraternity to control how we act and how we behave in the state. Yep. And yet it's a government that has, when we talked about this the other week, government has one thing, and it does one thing and one thing only well, and that is grow. Mm-hmm. And our Grand Lodge continues, our jurisdiction continues to add legislation year in and year out for the sake of adding legislation, because we believe that I would be dumbfounded if we ever got together for a Grand Communication and we got to the point of new legislation and there wasn't any, because we never seem to be satisfied. We always seem to look around and say, well, we need to have more rules. Somebody's doing something I don't like, so we better create new legislation to control and curb that behavior so that they don't do it, so they stop doing it. We are going to become South Carolina. I believe we are on the path, maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but I believe we are on the path where we're going to have somebody in the future who can pull a charter from a lodge for no reason, and who can expel, who will put together a sham trial to expel a past Grand Master or somebody else just because they said or did something that the Grand Master didn't like.
Well, and I hope not. I hope you're wrong.
And we'll see.
I understand where you're at, and I do. And I hope you're wrong, and I hope we can.
I hope I'm wrong.
Correct. And, you know, to take this outside of the Masonic realm for a minute, and looking to anyone out there who's actually listened to all of this and is staying through to the end, you know, and I mentioned this earlier, in some aspect of your life, if not multiple, you have opportunities where you are able to lead others. The natural tendency, I believe, for most people is to revert to being a manager.
Yeah. And
controlling that chaos and just doing damage control and trying to, control all of this. Well, what if? No. Stop trying to manage everything. There's enough management in your day-to-day life. Trust me, you can give a little bit up and look for ways that you can actually lead those people around you who are looking to you. There are people looking to you every day, begging for you to lead them some way, somehow. I don't care if you live alone and you just have a dog and cat. I mean, somebody's looking to you at some point to lead them. Where can you step up and inspire them to follow you instead of mandating their adherence to what you want them to do? There's a vast difference in that. And trust me, leading somebody in your normal day-to-day life is 100 times more gratifying for both of you.
Well, one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest things that a leader has to be able to do is they have to be able to give, they have to be able to let go.
Absolutely.
And most organizations, most people in a leadership role, including Arizona Masonry, are filled with people who refuse to let go.
Mhm.
because we have been taught that to be a manager you have to have control, and so we have been taught that we have to that in order to maintain control we have to manipulate things. And if Arizona Masonry is going to get better, and if leadership in any organization is going to get better, you have to have leaders that trust their people to do good things. You have to have leaders who will trust them not to screw up. If you spend the time vetting your people and knowing who they are, and you're hiring and you're bringing them on board for the right reasons, as opposed to what many of our lodges in the state of Arizona do, as long as pretty much as if do you have a pulse? Okay. And you're a dude. Okay. You can join our ranks. That's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
That is absolutely insanity. It means nothing. Masonry should mean something.
Well, and in that regard, that's why you're trying to create new rules to control behavior.
Because you bring in the wrong people.
Yep. If you're making members.
You're making members
actually raising brothers, and you believe that.
Then you don't have regulations around a club.
Worry. Right.
You don't have regulations. You don't give a crap whether or not somebody creates a chess club, or somebody creates a movie viewing club, or somebody creates a karaoke club. You don't care.
Right.
Because all that you should have to say is, if you're following the principles and values of Masonry, then you're good to go.
Right. Then you stop asking questions like, how do we control what we can do, and start pontificating on, hey, what other things could we do?
Right.
What are all the great things we get to do? Look at all the other stuff we can yet still do, and how we can grow. That's how you actually grow and become something that people want to be a part of.
Right. Anyway,
so
well, it was a good conversation. We probably talked
quite a while. Yep, a little bit.
If you stayed with us this entire time, we love you.
Yeah, love you guys. Mom, Dad,
and maybe by Wednesday morning I'll be brought up on Masonic charges for something. I don't know, but we'll see how that goes.
I doubt that highly.
If so, it'll just make the decision to not pay my dues for me.
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Anyway, you can find all of our stuff out on our website at fusionunderground.net. You can send us emails at contact@fusionunderground.net. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on pretty much anywhere that podcasts can be found. Just search for Fusion Underground, and we come up. So for Jason Moret, I'm Manuel Ramirez. Thanks for listening. You've been listening to the Fusion Underground.
Have a good night.